Okay, we have got to talk about episode 7 of Daredevil Born Again because this is probably the most disappointing episode of the season so far. Also, this will be a spoiler review, so here's your spoiler warning if you haven't seen the episode yet. And first up, I gotta talk about how much this show has wasted Muse's potential as a villain, because this man has probably had less than 30 minutes of screen time this season and then gets killed off in the third episode he shows up in. And I'm not saying he would have been the next Bullseye or Kingpin, but it would have been nice to get a little more characterization besides his parents making him take Taekwondo when he was younger. I will give credit where credit is due though and say that Hunter Duhan did give a really creepy performance as Muse in this episode, and I would have liked to see him get more scenes like his therapy session this season. Also, I thought it was a nice touch to have him attack Heather in the middle of the day. It just added to his creepy factor. And it gave us our first scene of Charlie Cox's Daredevil wearing the red suit and fighting in it in broad daylight. And speaking of that choppy and bad choreographed fight, I really hope we do not get any more fights that resemble episode 2, 5, and 7's ever again. I'm just so sick of them giving us fights that are that subpar when we've gotten great fights in this show, like the Daredevil versus Bullseye one and the Daredevil versus Muse one in episode 6. The one saving grace of the fight in this episode was when Daredevil shot the billy club through Muse's shoulder, because that actually caught me really off guard. Also, Heather shooting Muse was kind of unexpected in a good and bad way because we shouldn't have been killing him this early in the show in the first place. I think the Fisk and Vanessa scenes in this episode were definitely the standouts though, and I love that they're working more like a Bonnie and Clyde couple now with them setting up Luca at the end of the episode. Daniel surprisingly gets a pretty cool scene in this episode where he kind of turns into Fisk Jr. when having a conversation with BB. Fisk himself definitely had my favorite scene of the episode where he was ranting to Buck about Daredevil returning and how he destroyed his business in the past. You could just feel the hater energy through Vincent D'Onofrio's performance, and every word he said had some like venom to it. Matt and Heather said that they love each other this episode, and while it is a sweet moment, the whole time I was just thinking about how Karen's about to return to this season soon and how much more I want Matt and Karen to be together again. I love how Matt just blatantly leaves his fingerprints at Muse's lair while this is an active crime scene. That was one moment in this episode that definitely felt rushed and that the script needed another pass through or double check from somebody. There was also another scene in this episode where Matt and Heather are talking in the hospital that had some subtext where I think Heather knows that Matt is Daredevil, but she's just waiting for him to outright say it to her. I hope Fisk giving a press conference with the Anti-Vigilante Task Force means that the next 2 episodes of this season are going to be all about them versus Daredevil and Punisher, and maybe a little Bullseye sprinkled in to make things interesting. Overall though, this episode was definitely one of the weaker ones of the season in my opinion so far, but I have read some rumors on Twitter that this is the last episode of the season that uses old footage from the original version of the show before the creative reboot. And if that rumor is true, I am over the moon excited for these last 2 episodes of the season, because one of my least favorite things about season 1 of Daredevil Born Again so far has been them combining and doing a Frankenstein's monster thing with the old and new footage of this season. But y'all let me know what y'all thought of episode 7 of Daredevil Born Again, and make sure to follow for more Daredevil content.